Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Cassie Riva. I'm the Assistant Events Manager at an Unlikely Story bookstore in Plainville, Massachusetts. Before we start, here's a couple technical tips for you. If you lose audio or visual during the event, just refresh your page and that should fix it. We're also streaming on an Unlikely Stories Facebook page, so if you want to watch it there, you can. If you'd like to purchase Janella's books, click the green button below or the link above the video if you're watching on Facebook. And when you order When Night Breaks from an Unlikely Story on or before October 6th, that's tonight, you're going to receive a personalized copy of the book, a double-sided bookmark, and a When Night Breaks playbill designed by Alexis Castellanos while supplies last. Janelle is so awesome. She set up this whole pre-order campaign, and we have been getting pre-orders for weeks now, and I think we have over 100 of them now. We just have like giant trolley of books for her to come in and sign next week. We're so excited, so please keep adding to that pile. It's amazing. We're so honored to be Janella's Choice Indie Bookstore for this campaign, and we're the only store offering the super cool book swag. Janella Angeles is the best-selling author of Where Dreams Descend. She got her start in writing through consuming glorious amounts of fan fiction at a young age, which eventually led to creating original stories of her own. She currently resides in Massachusetts, where she publishes books on top of writing them, and is most likely to be found listening to musicals on repeat while daydreaming. The first book in Janella's Kingdom of Cards duology came out last year, and according to Haley Calvin of Neighborhood Reads, it's Moulin Rouge meets Phantom of the Opera. This YA fantasy debut got so much praise, it was included on lists like BuzzFeed's 29 YA fantasy books we can't wait to read in 2020, Goodreads' the 38 most anticipated YA novels of 2020, and Bustle's 23 debut books that are too good to ignore. Just to name a few, there's so many more lists. Tonight, Janella is sharing the second and final book in the Kingdom of Cards duology, When Night Breaks. Turn it the right side up. In this dramatic last act, the truth will come out, a kingdom will fall, hearts will collide, and the show comes to a spectacular end. This book is so pretty and shiny. I love it. Interviewing Janella tonight is Susan Dennard, the award-winning and New York Times bestselling author of the WITCHLAND series, which is now in development for TV from the Jim Henson Company, the Something Strange and Deadly series, and the upcoming Luminari series, as well as various short stories and other tales across the internet. Susan runs the popular newsletter for writers, Misfits and Daydreamers. When not writing, she can be found rolling the dice as a dungeon master. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Janella Angeles and Susan Dennard. Get you back on the screen. There you are. Hi.
Hello. Yes. Oh, Jay. Thanks, Kat. Well, congratulations on finishing your first series. It's pretty wild.
It is wild. I am someone who is known for never finishing anything. I was one of those monsters who would abandon their fanfic like after 30 chapters. So this is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. No. Since I've had my Wattpad story hanging out unfinished for like 2 years, I totally understand. I mean, I think it's only contracts that make me finish. Otherwise, I never would, because it's hard. It's easier to start, or at least I find that. Certainly start new series too. Like, I don't know about you, but it's just easier to start something new. I'm sure you discovered that sequels are hard.
Indeed. Very hard. Yeah, it is easier to start with the first because it's like you're just exploring the territory and where things could go. In the second book or in next subsequent books, it's like you have rules, you have boxes that you've put people in. You can't really make them do anything anymore. There has to be some, like, there are just a lot more restrictions, and that's always very tough, especially since I'm usually a pantser. So it's like I had to really just like rein myself in a lot, and that was very tough.
Yes, I relate. I'm not even really that much of a pantser, but I just really hate when I'm locked in. And in that's just the nature of publishing. You're very rarely writing a whole series before it's published. Like typically the first book is either pretty much done or even already published and on shelves by the time you're really finishing the sequels. And so you're locked in. You're locked in.
You're locked in, and it's like you're expected to answer certain questions. And I remember as I was writing the second book, I kept being like, why did I ask that question in the first book? Like, why did I do that?
I feel you. I have so many. I keep them all on index cards. So I have like a giant stack for the Witchlands, and I got through a lot in Witch Shadow. There's still a big stack of unanswered questions for the last book. So
that is so smart to have it all like stacked up, because what I did was like, well, I just wrote so many drafts of One Night Breaks that I kept getting confused about like what the storyline was, because I was like, wait, she was doing this in that draft and now she's over here. Where is she? And I know my editor and I were just getting confused, so it was not helpful.
I totally feel you, because like, you know, my Wind Witch was my really difficult problem child, and it was the same. By the end of it, I was like, I don't know what's in this book. So that's when I actually started this method. I went back and reread Truth Witch and Wind Witch, and then started keeping track of all of the promises I'd made, and I got myself organized. and then since then, I keep adding to it as I'm drafting or revising. I'll be like, oh yeah, you put that in there. You better answer that for the reader. So, okay, you made that promise, better fulfill it. Okay.
Wow, I'm impressed that you reread your own books, because I'm so terrified of reading what you just said.
It's traumatic. It's traumatic. I didn't want to. It's horrifying because you can't change anything, and all you want to do is change it. So what I ended up doing was listening to the audiobook, because it was different, you know. Then there's a narrator. It was almost like it was her book and not mine, and I could kind of detach myself from wanting to change things. There were still moments where I was like, ugh, but at least it was better than trying to like physically read the book. Ooh.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I commend you, because your series is still ongoing, whereas I'm done. So I can kind of take a breath, whereas it feels like your journey is kind of just starting.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Yeah, still have the Witchlands, and then the Luminaries starts too, and those will be going simultaneously, but whatever. It's cool. I'll sleep one day. I'm sorry about the toddler, you guys. I was telling Janella before we got on, like, it's been a really rough week for me. So if the toddler is a little loud, please forgive me. I will mute myself if it gets bad. But not to steal your spotlight. It's your big day. So I know that this has not been the easiest, because your first book and now your second book have come out during the pandemic. The pandemic we all thought would be over by now, but isn't. And I realize it's not necessarily the happiest topic, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I really appreciate your honesty online. You know, I'm all about being honest and transparent online about the realities of being a published author. And so I would love to know what it's like. Is it easier the second time through having it come out in a pandemic? Because I know for your first book, it's got to be so hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, thank you. Honestly, the only reason I feel brave enough to be as transparent as I've been is all because of Miss Susan Dennard, really honest queen. But I will have to say the second time around, I think, has been a lot easier. I don't know if it's because it's not a debut anymore, or because I just know what to expect now. But I remember last year, it was very hard because I was in the midst of deadlines, day job, and just trying to promote and not knowing how to promote virtually. Like, you kind of had to just pivot a lot of things you were going to do. So that was very tough. And there were times where I was like, I just don't want to be on social media right now. Like, and I wish I could have taken hiatuses, but it's like, that's kind of our only connection to the world. So we kind of had to be online a lot. And this time around, I felt like I wanted to do things a little differently. I wanted to put my energy into engaging with readers rather than being like, buy my book, buy my book. I wanted to actually reach out to people who like, you know, love the series and were really excited. And I'm really glad that right now, like, I feel like I've been doing the most social media I've done in my entire life, but it's all for fun. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have a good time. And I think that's the biggest tip for anyone who is trying to promote their series is like, do it because you want to, not because you feel like you have to. And I'm really happy with how many people have really shown up and supported. I think that has also made the second time around, you know, so much better because I feel like I have somewhat of a community, a lot of readers. Like, it's like, yeah, with the first book, no one really knew who I was because they hadn't read Where Dreams Ascend. Whereas with the second book, you at least have readers to be with you for the ride. So
yeah, definitely. And just imagine when you get your first in-person event. I think that's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible for you.
I'm gonna cry. I'm like, I will sign books on the sidewalk at this point. Like, I'm craving human connection.
Oh my gosh, yes, I do understand that. I gave the receptionist at my vet a hug today. So that should tell you how desperate I am for human contact. It's not my toddler. Yes. So you mentioned like that you were inspired by my transparency, which I appreciate. And I feel like we should tell everyone how we know each other because it goes back a long ways. And I don't even think I fully know because I just have my first memory of kind of meeting you with Maddie and Axe at I think an RT. Was it RT? Yeah. In Dallas.
In Dallas, I think that was 2015 or
2014. I think it was 2014. So it's been a while. It's been
no. When I think of Suze, I think she's one of the first authors with a capital A who was very nice to me, with no agent, who is still just like trying to finish her first book. And I remember Susan and Sarah Rash, another lovely author, invited me and my friends to dinner. And I remember thinking, this is so cool. They are so nice. And honestly, like, it was such a wonderful experience because I was like, I want to be able to do this for another writer, like to have them feel like, you know, I'm not just some baby writer. Like, they actually see me as like, you know, someone to take out to dinner. So like, that was a really impactful like meeting for me.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Axe says it was 2015. She's pretty sure. I clearly don't remember anything. It was before Truth Witch was out. I do know that. So
I remember, yeah.
I'm glad that I met you guys and all of you are still my friends. My camera's getting blurry. It's cool because after that too, I mean, I would see you guys all the time at events. You were this awesome little crew. And it's not, like, even though I was an author with a capital A, it's really nice to see familiar faces. It really, really is. And you will discover that soon enough, my friend. But you see it online too, I'm sure, with your readers. Like, you see the same names pop up and you just love them. You're like, thank you. Thank you for existing. I love you.
No, absolutely. I remember I was very lucky to go to ABA, like Winter Institute, and Ale Midwinter in beginning of 2020, and I was able to sign ARC. So like, I do have a sign.
You did, yes.
I had I had my author time, and then it was swiftly cut short. But when I was doing my ARC signing, and you know how they have those press badges where it's the name and the social media handle, I think it was the first person in my signing line, I was like, I know you from the internet. It was so wonderful. It was such a good moment.
Yes, it is. It really is. I've obviously been doing this a long time now. Witch Shadow is my 9th book, but it's still the same. When you meet the people that you interact with on the internet, it's just a really exciting moment. Is it just me that's lost Janella, or am I the one who's disappeared?
I still see you.
I still see you. You, if you refresh your page.
Me, Susan should.
We might lose you for a quick second.
Oh no,
That's okay.
technical difficulties.
Here, I'll come back on screen until she does.
Uh-oh.
There we go. All right. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, you guys. We don't have the best internet at my house. We don't have the best anything. We live in the middle of nowhere. I like where we live sometimes. Right now, not so much because nobody's vaccinated, but it's pretty in the summer. And where are you? You're in Massachusetts? You in Boston?
I'm in the Cambridge area. And for some reason, my internet is also kind of spotty.
All right.
It really shouldn't be, but that's how it is.
Well, I am someone who's like rural and you're like in the city. Very different life. Were you able to like see people early in the pandemic when there was all the lockdowns, or were you pretty much alone?
I had a roommate at the time.
Yeah.
And I think when we realized we were going for like the long haul, because I remember at the beginning, everyone was like, oh, it's just gonna be a 2-week vacation.
Yeah.
Not what it was. So once it became like a much longer situation, my roommate went back home and I ended up going back home. But for a long time, I was just in my apartment by myself, which was really, really tough. Having fun and just like slowly becoming more and more anxious about debut year. It was so early that I just didn't know. I was like so scared and like what was happening in the world. Both my parents work in like the healthcare field. So like, I was scared for them. Like it was just like a whole mess. I didn't see my family for a while. And I feel like that was a huge reason why. That was probably the biggest reason why it was so hard debuting, was just being perpetually scared and then having to be excited, like all in one.
Look, debut is really hard. I have only met a handful of debuts who said it was a good experience. And I don't mean that to sound bad and like it's like authors aren't grateful, but it's a really, really, really difficult transition. And it's very rarely it's sort of like wedding days. Like it can never live up to the glossy magazine cover. Okay. It just won't. Mm-hmm. And we put so much pressure on this moment. And you don't really feel any different. And if anything, you're super stressed because now you're worried about all these other things that you weren't worried about before, like sales numbers. And so, it's a really hard experience. I've talked many a debut through panic attacks over the years, and I myself had a pretty hard debut year, and it's I think something that we don't talk about because it's, again, when you're not published, it looks like you just look like an ungrateful jerk, but that's not the reality. It's a really, really difficult shift. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of good and that you're not grateful. It just means it's really, really hard in ways that you can't anticipate. It's like becoming a parent. Like no one can tell you what that's like. Sure, I knew in theory it would be hard, but oh my God, it's just not, you can't know what it's like until you experience it. And it's the same with being a debut. So, yes. That I do think like you had a double whammy. I mean, you had the difficulty of the pandemic, and it is a real difficult challenge being a debut. So you got hit hard, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, now I feel like I've had enough time to reflect and look at it in retrospect. I feel so bad for, those debuts who were out literally the week of lockdown. Like, at least I had some time to kind of lick my wounds and try with my publisher. But, like, I know a lot of people were just like hit by a bus and had no way out. So like, I mean, it's a sucky situation. And I feel like I always remember that I was in a much better place than most, but yes, definitely did not make debuting any fun. But
or fun. Yeah. I'm glad when Night Breaks has been a better experience, because you were also struggling with the sequel, and it's really hard. Sequels are so hard. And I think second books for published authors are the hardest. The hardest in your career is your second book. And so again, I can't think of anyone, I'm sure they exist, who thought their second book was easier. like maybe one person that comes to my mind, but otherwise everyone else I know found their second book to be extremely difficult. And again, it's because circumstances have changed. You know, you're no longer, you're working under a totally new, different set of constraints, and it's hard. And so you had it all happening. And I'm gonna get up really quickly and let my annoying dog in my office because he's scratching at the door.
Cameo, dog cameo.
Come on. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, these dogs, they're so spoiled, and that's my fault. I know. So I'm not very far in Where Dreams Descend, but I am delighted to be reading it. And I would just love to, before we start taking audience questions, like ask you a little bit about it. So for one thing, I am just blown away by your prose. I am not someone who writes very pretty, I don't think. And you write so pretty. I like highlighted a few lines because I just thought it's just so well done. And like little things ways of using verbs that I would never think to use a verb. Like I think at one point you said something about a street's being paved with frost. And I was like, what a brilliantly simple way to describe that. That's amazing. So I just want to compliment you on that. I think it's so very beautifully written, and it's so evocative. It's so perfect for the atmosphere that I think you're trying to lay. You are building a very, very tangible atmosphere. And I'm just impressed, Janella. I'm impressed this is a debut. So
thank you. I'm gonna cry.
Oh, I've cried so many times at events. You're good. So I would like to know, how do you say the leading lady's name?
Her name is Kalia.
Kalia. Okay, so I was saying that wrong. Glad I asked. Kalia. So I love Kalia because she is what you would almost call the unlikable heroine, which is please forgive me for using that phrase. You know that when I use that phrase, I mean that in a very good way, because she's someone who she has ambition, and as women, we're so often penalized for that, and in many ways she sort of is so far, and obviously she's not letting that stop her and is overcoming that. So I'm curious why you decided to write a character who is so openly ambitious. I approve, don't get me wrong. I just am wondering, was it sparked by anything in particular?
Yeah. Well, everyone knows that Where Dreams Descend is like very Phantom-esque, Phantom of the Opera, which I love, but I really had, my fanfic brain was like, what if I took Phantom but did this instead? And one of the things that I had always played around with in my mind was, the character of Christine, like the main character in Phantom. She's this like talented young ingenue, but she's so timid and scared, and she gets like kidnapped at least 3 times, like the duration of the story. It's like, I like this story, but what if, why wasn't she more ambitious or like wanted that stage? It kind of seemed like an accident that she was able to get her spot, and like everything kind of just fell into her lap. I'm like, what would happen if you had a more ambitious Christine who actually wanted that spotlight? And so that kind of sparked the first kernel for Kalia, which made her a really fun character to write, because before her I'd always written characters who were like scared and like very quiet, and like they're not that fun. But Kalia is just like, she knows what she wants and she owns it, and it was very refreshing to write a character like that. So that was definitely the first jumping off point for her.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I talk about a lot in my newsletter and then in real life is that I can't write a book until I know my character's desperate desire. And I feel like you can, it's so tangible for Kalia, like right away. You feel what she desperately wants, and that's a great way for all you writers out there to make sure your book is propulsive. and that the character is driving the story and not being driven, to give them a really desperate desire that they'll do anything for.
Yes, no, and I feel like that desire was also it resonated with me a lot because all I had ever wanted was to be published. Like my family who's probably watching me can attest to that like literally all I would do is like read and like write fanfic, like secretly.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was be an author. So her sort of tunnel vision to getting on that stage was sort of like my tunnel vision to getting published. And it's like, it's great that you're so driven, but it's also like, as you see in Where Dreams Descend, like she realizes that, you know, it's a lonely path. And if you're only focusing on this one goal, you know, what else there is in life when you reach it. So it was always like, yeah, it got deep.
It's true though, but that actually lends itself to the debut depression that I was talking about, because you realize, oh wow, literally nothing in my life has changed. It's still me I have to wake up with in the morning. And yeah. And so I love that that's where you took it. I love that that's sort of the theme here. I'm excited to keep reading. I like am not online very much these days, so I've never seen any sort of spoilers. So that's good. I'm excited. Yeah. And no spoilers in the chat bar. If anyone ruins this book for me, I'm gonna be real mad. I have a question too. So since it's a duology, did you know it was going to be that when you first started writing it? I know you said you wrote it sort of for fun initially, like the first book. So was your thought that it would be a duology then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always knew it was going to be a duology, and I think my agent and I were very glad that it was only a duology because I could not crank another story out of where this was headed. But I feel like the way I look at Where Dreams Descend is like it's an act 1, then you have your intermission, and then When Night Breaks is the act 2. So the way that I ended Where Dreams Descend sort of ends in a point where it reminds me of something that happens in Phantom of the Opera. And When Night Breaks is an extension of that part that I didn't feel got explored a lot. It kind of does in the book, Phantom of the Opera, which is such a funny book. Weirdly funny to read.
Really?
You should listen to it on audio. I did like when I was writing just to like, you know, get ideas. It is so funny. Like it felt like I was watching The Office, but like for opera house. So many hijinks, and it was great. But yeah, I feel like I could not have really expanded upon what was happening anymore. Like I do have ideas, of course, but for the current story, it was always a duology.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's good. You don't want to, like you said, not have enough for more, or get your publisher wanting you to write more and you're like, I'm just milking it now. That does happen. Now I appreciate that this was not the book you got your agent with. Do you mind talking about that? Because I think it's very inspirational for any of our aspiring authors out there or published authors. This business is like woo 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 woo.
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I feel like when we look at author stories, we usually see like this was their first book ever and they got $5 bajillion, and like you see all these success stories and think it's the norm, but it's
and they're really young.
Yeah, and all these wonderkins are coming out of nowhere.
She's 12.
And it's like, well, I felt like for a while I was like, well, that's not me. Am I doing this wrong? Because yeah, Where Dreams Descend was my third book. I'd written, my first book was a very, very bad dystopia that I wrote during the age of Hunger Games. So that didn't go far, rightfully so. And I wrote another fantasy that was the one that got me my agent. And I worked on that one for a very long time. That was also a very hard project. Like,
I remember. Yes.
yeah, no, that book honestly felt like When Night Breaks. Like, it was just like, I couldn't figure out how to make it
Yeah.
right. And it was literally breaking my soul at some points, but somehow we got it sub ready and it, did not sell. And I think it's for the best because I still think there's a lot of, work that can be done. I think the story is a little too big for me, if I'm going to be honest. So even though people are like, will you return to that one? I'm like, maybe not. Like, it's okay. It's okay to shelf books. Like,
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. I have a lot of shelved books.
Yeah. It's like, as long as you feel happy with the ending and how it ended for you, like, I'm really happy with that I was able to finish it the way I did. But because I had a rough time with that book, that was when I started escaping into a book that would become Where Dreams Descend. And Where Dreams Descend was like that fun project that I would like cheat on my on sub story. I'm like, this is so fun. I just want to keep writing it like in between revisions. So that's when I knew it was something special. I actively was looking forward to writing it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, for some reason, I don't know why I didn't think it was going to sell. I was like, this is a little too high concept. Like, there's nothing more high concept than Phantom of the Opera meets Moulin Rouge. I was like, this is impossible. So imagine my surprise.
and happiness.
Yes.
It's a long road. I do think too, like, there's never, like, when you're under contract, you feel guilty about working on these other things, but at the same time, it's so easy to lose your love of writing when you're a published author. So I think it's always good to work on something that makes you happy, so that then, if nothing else, even if it never sells, you can always look back and be like, it made me happy to write while I was writing it. And it's hard to do that. I mean, I know recently I was talking to my editor, and Luminaries, when I wrote this book, The Luminaries, recently, it was like that for me. It was like my cheat on the Witchlands book. And my editor was like, well, now that you've been editing this and it's turned in, is it not fun anymore to work on the sequel? And I'm like, maybe you're right on that. That does happen. And it's true. I mean, it's really hard once the book is then in the hands of your publisher. It changes. It's unfortunate, but it's true. It doesn't mean you can't rediscover the love. I feel like I sound like such a Debbie Downer. This is a great job. We are very privileged to be able to do it. But it is challenging whenever your art becomes the thing that also pays you. And I know you have a day job still. Do you find that because of that, does the writing still feel like an escape to you? I mean, I know the sequel was so hard, or does it has being published, like, or being under contract, changed your relationship to writing in any way?
I mean, I feel like I'm very glad to be in the position to have a day job and to be writing, because I'm a Cancer. I like stability.
Yeah.
I like having financial stability, and publishing is one of those industries that doesn't pay consistently or much, depending on who you are. So it is harder for sure. I feel like in the early days, it was much easier because I was working on Where Dreams Descend, and it really did feel like the escape. Whereas with When Night Breaks, it was a lot harder, because when things aren't going well, it's just hard. And especially when you're under contract, it's not like you can kind of put hold on life. You can't wait for things to get better to pick up and finish the book. You kind of just have to keep trucking along. And I was, I've been very open about this on my social media. But I was very sick last year. I had to actually go on partial medical leave because it was just so hard to balance both and to feel like you're being ripped in two. And now I sound like a Debbie Downer. But I do think that in the end, like, I'm very grateful for my job as a writer and for where I'm currently working. And this whole experience, I think, taught me all about like balance, because I realized I wasn't living a very well-balanced life with work-life balance. And it sucks that this had to be the way I learned that. But knowing how driven I was to get published, maybe this was the only way I would have learned, was really having to pump the brakes in a huge life-shattering way. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. And I want to commend you, because I think it's actually incredibly good and healthy that you figured it out after 2 books. I see a lot of authors who still haven't figured it out, and I didn't figure it out until last year when I gave myself shingles from a deadline. So I think you're way ahead of me. I only just finally started to like really implement work-life balance. I almost died in childbirth and then went home and immediately started writing because I had to meet a deadline. That was ridiculous in hindsight. Like, it was so unnecessary. And I'm mad at myself for doing that and not spending that time with my newborn, and recovering, and then ended up getting shingles out of stress. So it sounds ridiculous, like you're an author and you gave yourself shingles from stress, but you can't understand it until you're in it. And it's because, like you said, you're so driven. You feel so lucky, because we are, to have gotten this chance. And then it's so easy for it to be taken away. It's unfortunately an extremely unstable job. And so you don't want to miss any opportunity. You want to just keep pushing yourself. But at the end of the day, like, it is just a book. And the great thing about readers is they will wait. Publishers might not, the readers will. And I think ultimately that's what matters most. If we have to, we can self-publish for those readers, you know? I'm glad you had your awakening, and as awful as I know that it was for you, I actually think it's going to serve you so well in the long run that you've been through that awful gauntlet and come out the other side. And yeah, you have perspective that is very much needed. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the audience too, you guys. I swear we do love our jobs, but it comes with all of this difficulty and challenge that's very rarely vocalized online. We only see the glamorous and the Good Morning America interview or whatever, as if I've ever been on there. And it's good for us, I think, to be honest about a lot of the challenges, because I think when you do become published, you think you're the only one, and that's a horrible feeling. It's like, I keep referring to this, but new moms who think they're the only ones struggling because, everyone looks so glamorous and fit on Instagram. And meanwhile, your uterus is still enormous and you haven't slept in 6 months. So I think it's good for us to be open and transparent about this. And I appreciate that you have been online. And I appreciate that you talked to me about how challenging When Night Breaks was, because
yeah,
I mean, it made me feel better too. Like, oh yeah, other people have a hard time. It's not just me.
Oh my God. No, like, guys, I was in the throes of like depression just one day. And I remember I DM'd you and I was like, Suze, I need help. And you were like, can we chat on the phone? And it was so wonderful just chatting with you, because I remember when I was really struggling with When Night Breaks, I would watch your YouTube video, The Rejection Is Not the End. I would watch that on repeat. Like, I'm pretty sure I have it memorized at this point. Like, it was so important for me to watch that a lot every time I felt down. And I remember just feeling like, who would understand what I'm going through? You. And you helped me so much on that.
So glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I'm getting emotional. I'm so glad. Again, guys, we sound very down. It is a wonderful job, but it's art, and art and creativity come from this deep and sometimes very dark place inside you. And it can be extremely challenging when you have to do that on command. And so I'm glad that I could help you in any way. I realized I was afraid I would not have enough to talk about with Janella, because I was like, I didn't prepare for this at all. I have a crying child today. It was a rough day. I'm not prepared. And now we've managed to fill all this time. So should we take some audience questions?
Well, let's do it.
All right. That was awesome. I know the audience really appreciated you guys talking about that. That's great. All right. I want to try to invite a couple people on screen. So if you asked a question in the Ask a Question box, like you were supposed to, thank you. And you want to come on screen and talk to Janella and Susan.
That's crazy.
No. Write something in the chat so I can invite you on. Just whatever. It can be an emoji. It can be a smiley face. Just raise your hand, the hand emoji. All right. While we wait for that, let's see what we have. All right. This one's from Mara. Which High School Musical songs are on the Where Dreams Descend When Night Breaks playlist and why?
Hard question. Definitely Bet on It from High School Musical 2. That's a really good pump up jam. And I would listen to it to pump me up if I was feeling really down. So that one. And I feel like actually Sharpay in general, her energy, like, it helped feed Kalia. So all the Sharpay moments, all of it.
Hey! Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I asked at least one question. Sorry. Go carry on with High School Musical.
I know. I wrapped up. That was it. It ends with Sharpay. So
Okay, my first question was, how do you both of you approach manuscript revisions? Because it's hurting my soul.
Well, I mean, it depends on if it's editorial, like it's for my editor, or if it's self revisions, because I still do, both. But I go in with a pretty solid plan. I don't know about you, Janella, with your pantsing, your wild pantsing.
No, I've had to reform my ways because it was too chaotic. But with manuscript revisions, I feel like you kind of have to do it in tiers, where you go from big to small. You don't want to work on the prose first, like, for one thing, because it's like you might not even have that scene in later. So always go for the big stuff, like structural, then to like plot, then to character, and then you can start prettying things up. But that's sort of my approach.
Awesome question. Thank you, Liz.
Yay!
Hi, Kat.
Hi, how are you guys? I just took a shower, so that's why I look like this.
Why you look so clean.
All right, let me see how I worded my question. It's really professional, so I have to read it.
It's about Shrek, isn't it?
The word. What are you talking about? I said either Dreamcast your characters in Shrek or Dreamcast Shrek characters in your book. And a bonus question is, which of your characters is most likely to sing I Need a Hero on top of a piano?
I'm not this familiar with Shrek, so I'm just going to let that one go to you guys.
I'm so sorry that you got trapped in this question.
Yeah. So Mara says Shrek is Kalia, and I can agree with that. I feel like Aros would be Donkey for sure. I feel like DeMarco would be Shrek when he turns into a human, because he's always so unsure and insecure.
Okay.
I feel like Jack would be Prince Charming. These are very specific. I've clearly thought about this a lot.
Marco could be Shrek when Shrek accidentally wishes himself out of existence.
Ooh, yeah, in Shrek 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see that.
We went deep into the Shrek universe here.
There's Shrek 4?
Well, there's Shrek 5 apparently.
There will be.
I love how this evolved into this conversation. I'm not entirely sure how it happened, but I'm absolutely here for it.
My writing group is extremely passionate about Shrek. Oh, okay. Wait, what was the other question after that?
Oh, Suze, maybe you can answer this one at least. Is which of your characters is most likely to sing I Need a Hero on top of a piano?
Probably Softy. I don't know. I could see all of them doing it in different ways. It could be a montage of each of them in their own unique way.
I think we need to invite Kat back to host some events with us.
I'm just going to moderate everything. And then each event, I'll be more and more in cosplay as Shrek.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kat. That was great.
Bye.
That was awesome. All right, let's do some rapid fire questions real quick. This one's from Olivia. Which Hogwarts house would you give to each character?
You take that, because I feel like I've answered that so many times online. So, and it's your event. So let's go.
Okay. I feel like Kalia is Slytherin. Jack is Slytherin. Aros is Hufflepuff. And DeMarco is Ravenclaw. No, not Ravenclaw. He's Gryffindor.
I was about to say Ravenclaw, but I only just recently met him in the book, so I don't know him that well.
He's like, I was like, is he smart? No, he's kind of dumb. So like, he's probably good.
He's a himbo.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
I love a himbo. It's okay.
This one's from Alexa, and it's for both of you. If you were to write in a genre outside of fantasy, what would you choose?
I wish that I could write there are two genres I wish I could write. Romance, like straight romance. But I am incapable of doing it. I love reading adult romance, but it's like I'm incapable of writing just a romantic subplot. I have to throw in some other thing, and the romance has to be the subplot. It can't be the main plot. I am amazed at these authors who can write 1 million romances a year, and everyone is unique and different. I just find that to be so incredible. Because speaking of constraints, like we were talking about, there are very strict constraints in that genre, and I just can't do it. And the same with cozy mystery. I love cozy mysteries, but it's the same thing. It's like, oh, now everyone has magic and there's some other plot, because I just cannot seem to stick with the requirements of the genre. No matter how much of it I read, it's just like brain can't do it, and I love it. I wish I could.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny, because I was gonna say romance, because I love romance. I feel like I would love to write like a rom-com, but I have never written contemporary, so I don't know if I'm good at it. But I do love romance, and it is like, I feel like it's one of the hardest things to write, but you can learn so much when you read romance books, because like you just learn more about character development and chemistry, and it's like that is so hard to build and have that be the main plot and not get bored. So like lots of romance writers everywhere.
Amen.
I love that romance covers are all like almost identical. It's always like a woman like in some kind of a corset or something like slim looking, and it's her side profile in every cover, and I love it.
It's weird.
It's some like, this is romance. I don't even need to.
Those conventions, you know, like it's like it was the full bodice rippers in the 90s that I would see at the checkout at the grocery store, you know, and now it's the girl in a corset side view. But then I also read a lot of historical, and sometimes it just depends on the steam level. If it's more of a sweet one, then she'll be fully covered, and it'll be more like frilly in the sunshine, and she's got a parasol or something. It is fascinating how much those covers really tell you the kind of book you're going to get. Yes. And how the authors manage to write the same kind of book, yet so different every time. Yes. I am so impressed. Oh my God.
For real.
This is another good one from Alexa. Of all the events / performances in the books, if it's not too spoilery, which one would you like to see brought to life?
Ooh, cool question.
Ooh.
I'm sure you can be vague without spoiling something.
I feel like, I mean, I would honestly love to, this is a cop-out, but I would love to see all the performances brought to life. Like the whole in Where Dreams Descend, the story centers around a magician's competition called Spectacular. And I feel like they have some really fun like magician acts and spectacle. So I love all of that.
Yeah.
But for book 2, and this is not a spoiler, but there are this group of characters who are headliners in in the book, and I love them so much. They're called the Diamond Rings, and they have this really amazing aerial hoop show, and they just, if they stepped on me, I would thank them for like, so much. So those are the things I'd love to see.
These questions are moving so fast. I'm like trying to read the line. They're just like scrolling up. All right, this one's from James. Are there any specific resources that you guys use when you're in a writing rut?
Specific resources. I am someone who is always devouring new resources, like trying to find new books, taking new workshops. Like I'm hoping that I will find the silver bullet that suddenly makes writing a book easy. So I'm always like, whenever I'm in a rut, like, okay, let's see what Amazon's going to recommend as a new writing book for me. Nothing like that has ever come across my path. Unfortunately, writing books remains difficult. One of the resources that I actually have found the most helpful in the last year is a very affordable $50 workshop from Maggie Stiefvater. She sells it on Etsy. It's $50. It's all videos and transcripts, and it's amazing. I was surprised how much her process is like mine. And even though I didn't necessarily learn anything, just hearing somebody talk about their process and that it was like mine really helped me feel like, oh, I maybe do know what I'm doing. Okay, let's take another stab at this book. And then the luminaries poured out. So I highly recommend that. And if you're a beginner, I think it's actually really great resources and would be really, really helpful to maybe a newer writer or a more experienced writer like me. I've been writing for many, many years, and I got a lot out of it. So $50, Maggie Stiefvater.
Ooh, and you could buy workshops on Etsy. That's
she also sells forward editions, which I'm not quite sure is legal, but it's brilliant. We get all these editions. My basement is full of books that I don't know what to do with because who wants the Serbian edition?
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah, smart. She's been around a long time. She knows what she's doing.
Yes. Yeah, I am also, well, actually, I used to not like reading craft books. I was always like, I'm just going to read and I will absorb the brilliance. But that does not work.
It only gets you so far. Yeah.
It only gets you so far. So when I was struggling with One Night Breaks, I was literally just trying to do anything possible to get my brain to work. So I started outlining. I started reading all these books. I started looking at workshops. Yeah, I like did everything just to see what would stick. And a resource that really helped me, even though I didn't necessarily follow it, was Jessica Brody's Save the Cat novel. Save the Cat is like a beat sheet that's usually used for script writing, but she was able to change it into a novel format, and it was so helpful. It's such a good book. And it also just helps to look at movies and TV shows for me personally. Like I was trying to figure out how to write a sequel. So I just looked at a lot of movies that were sequels. And I now like, I feel like I can teach a whole college course on how to write a sequel because I know exactly what has to happen. But for some reason, I couldn't make that happen with my own sequel. I just started absorbing information.
So hard. No, I mean, there is this magic thing you have to have. Like, you can know how. I clearly know how to write a book. You clearly know how to write a book. But that'll only get you so far sometimes. And then on the other flip side, like, you may have the most amazing idea and even write good prose. But at some point, you need to know how to do what you're doing. Like, yes, reading a lot will get you so far. But you do reach a point, I think most people do anyway, where you're like, I actually maybe need to study a little bit of craft. It's like, I can learn French by being immersed in it, but at some point I do need to study the grammar. Like I just do. Unfortunately, I learned that this year. And so I do think at some point, it can't hurt ever anyway, certainly to study writing craft. So it's good. I've heard good things about the Jessica Brody book. I will definitely add that to my list.
She also has like a virtual writing academy that like and has all these videos, and it was extremely helpful.
Cool.
Do recommend.
Cool.
And we have time for one more question. I lost it. They're still moving so fast. You guys are asking such great questions tonight. It's awesome. This one's from Maylin. Could you talk a little bit about how you brought the When Night Breaks playbill to life? Do you happen to have one?
I don't. So currently the playbill is actually in production, HE double hockey sticks, and I'm very sad, waiting for the playbill to be printed. But rest assured, she's beautiful. I had always wanted to have a playbill as a pre-order goodie. That was sort of my dream pre-order campaign goodie. And I thought that, oh, it's the perfect kind of thing because like people collect it. You can put in a recap, which there is a recap of Where Dreams Descend in there that you can read before you read When Night Breaks. There's a cast list. You can kind of have like a refresher before diving into the sequel. It's like basically giving you like a brochure about my books, but it's really pretty cover. Yeah, and it looks stunning. The wonderful Alex Castellanos illustrate, like I feel like I've monopolized her talent for all of my things because she worked on my show poster for Where Dreams Descend, and I knew to tap her for When Night Breaks because she's also a theater lover, and it was so fun just bouncing ideas of what the illustration would be. The whole process was like, I thought I knew what I wanted, but then Alex showed me something better. And we kind of just like, we just kept bouncing off each other. And we finally have, the finished product. I wish I had it with me, but you can get it from An Unlikely Story. It's on all my socials.
Alex is the best. She also has done plenty of Witchland's art too. So she did a cool movie poster for Truth Witch, and then she designed the enamel pins that came with the Blood Witch pre-order campaign. So
she did my bookmarks and my book plates. Literally,
Alex.
We love Alex. Hire Alex.
And buy her graphic novel, which comes out in March, I think. March.
Yeah.
So.
All right. That was awesome. I can't wait to see the playbill. So click that green button right now. Everyone, do it. Order one for yourself and then order one for your library or a teacher or a friend. Holidays are coming. You want to order now because shipping delays are real bad this year. These books are so good. These are so fun. Make sure you order. If you want a personalized copy, please make sure you put your order in tonight so that in case we need to order more books, we should have enough. But just in case, we have time to order them before Janella comes in to sign. So click that green button. We can only ship in the US and Canada right now, unfortunately. So if you are watching from another country, I'm so sorry, but please order the books from your local indie. And thank you both so much. Thank you, Susan. I know this has been a tough week for you, so thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you.
And Janella, thank you so much. This is so great. Thank you for choosing us.
So many congratulations. I hope this doesn't sound weird, but I'm really proud of you. I'm so happy for you, and you got through this book and you got starred review. I mean, I know how much you struggled, and I'm really proud of you for getting out the other end and it being such a good book. You did it. You did it.
Oh, you're going to make me cry.
So good. Thank you both so much. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.